So in this particular problem, we have a loan amount for $3,000. So the amount of money that you borrow, that's called the principal. And so this $3,000 is going to become the P. Now the interest is the amount of money you have to pay to borrow the money. And so we want to find out how much money am I going to have to pay to borrow the money, the $3,000. The rate is the R, but the catch is you can't ever insert, and it's really in any math equation, you can't insert a percentage with a percent sign. You have to turn it into a decimal. So if you remember, and you might need to put this into your notes if you don't, to turn a number from a percent into a decimal, you divide by 100. So 25% is 0.25, or 14% is 0.14. So when I go to insert 11% into this formula, I'm not going to insert the number 11, I'm going to insert 0.11, because 11 divided by 100 is 0.11. And then your time is always going to be in years. So they're saying that this interest is compounded once a year. Now you can have things compounded monthly, weekly, daily, every second. They even sell ones with instantaneous ones, but it's only compounded once a year. And so these are pretty basic. Your time and all the ones you guys are going to face is just going to be 1. Now, we want to know how much money am I going to owe after 1 year goes by and I haven't paid anything. So I'm obviously going to owe the $3,000 because I have borrowed $3,000. But in addition to that, how much interest are we going to owe? Now to find interest, it's principal times rate times time. So the principal was $3,000, the interest rate was 11%, but again, notice I put in 0.11 and not the number 11. And then it's for 1 year, so 1. When I multiply these three things together, I get 330. So for borrowing the $3,000 for 1 year, I'm going to owe an extra $330. So the amount of money that I owe after 1 year goes by, when I add those together, is $3,330. Okay, now there's a follow-up question that says, but what if you borrowed the money for 2 years? Then how much money would you owe at the end of those 2 years if you didn't make any payments? Well, I need to find how much I owe at the end of 1 year first, because at the end of that 1 year, if I did pay $3,330, I'd be done. But it's more like I'm gonna let it ride. And so I'm gonna continue letting interest accrue. So my loan amount is no longer for $3,000. I now owe $3,330. So what will I owe at the end of 1 more year? Well, I'm definitely gonna owe the $3,330. So this guy right here, that's coming down because that's how much I definitely owe. But in addition to that, I'm going to owe interest on that money. So when I do principal times rate times time, the interest rate is still 0.11. The time is still 1 year because it's 1 extra year. But this is my new amount. So now I'm going to multiply these three numbers together, and I have $366.30 that I am owing on this loan that year, plus the amount of money that I owed at the beginning of that year. And if I add those together, I have $3,696.30. you're not gonna have to do for 3 years, but let's say that I borrowed it for 3 years instead. You would just keep going and saying, okay, let's start with this amount of money, and it'd be this plus the interest on this money, which would be this number times 0.11 times 1, and I could add on the next bit of interest, and you just keep using the number that you have that you owe at the end of that amount of time. Okay, so step 1, take the original loan amount times the interest rate times 1 in this case for time, and add that to the original loan amount, and that's how much you owe after 1 year. Then you reuse this number and you add it to the interest on that money. So this money times the percent times 1, and then add those together, and that's how much I have after 2 years.